Hi, everyone. Good morning, and thank you, Min, for the kind introduction. I'm really excited to be here with you today. I think Jesse's talk was actually a fantastic introduction to mine, so you'll see hopefully a lot of overlap, but I'm talking about a little bit of a different area this morning. So I'm going to be talking about impurity identification and degradation product identification in synthetic peptides using a modified Orbitrap hybrid mass spectrometer, which, as you'll see in my talk, is the new Exedion platform. Quick pause for a conflict of interest statement. And then I want to start off by setting the stage with my role at what I do at Abbvie. So as most of you probably know, drug development is really a continuum all the way from discovery to when a product is commercialized. My role fits right in the middle, so I'm in development, in between discovery and operations. So I really start working on compounds somewhere around late discovery as we're optimizing our lead molecule that we want to take forward in development. And then I continue working on those programs until somewhere around phase 2, phase 3. Similar to Jesse, I recently underwent a name change of my group as well. So it was formerly small molecule analytical R&D, now synthetic molecule analytical R&D. And then as Min mentioned, my exact role is predictive stability and structure elucidation. So I think Jesse gave us a fantastic introduction to structure elucidation, but I'll introduce the concept of predictive stability and kind of how that fits in with the structure elucidation. So as we move through development of these compounds, early, we're typically doing in silico assessments to understand any possible degradants that may form in our molecules. We'll also do some solution-forced degradation experiments to understand the realm of those degradation products that can form and the impact of characteristics such as light, pH, oxidants, etc. As the molecule moves forward, we start looking at what we call predictive stability studies. So this is on something that's representative of the final drug product. So this may be tablets or capsules. It could be a liquid solution as well. So we're starting to kind of narrow down our understanding of the degradation products that could form. And then as we move forward into clinical trials, we set this up on long-term stability. We look at what actually forms. So for example, with the solution stress, you can see in the black, this is our unstressed API. And then as we introduce it to hydrogen peroxide to stress this, we see new products that form. And likewise, for the predictive stability, we'll look at different temperature and RH combinations, look at the impurities that form. We can use this data to build models to predict what we expect to see on long-term stability. So we've used these workflows for quite a while for traditional small molecules. And more recently, we've been working with peptides, and a lot of the same workflows apply to those as well. So that's what I'm going to focus on today. So when we think about therapeutic peptides, of course, top of mind for most people is probably GLP-1s. Everybody's heard of them. They're in the news a lot. However, therapeutic peptides have been on the market in other applications for a while as well. So, for example, hormone analogs are technically peptides. There's some oncology applications of those as well. And really, they're diverse structurally and also with respect to application. And this will only continue to expand as more and more companies are investing in this research. They do bring some additional challenges, however. So, of course, with respect to chemical degradation, there are some kind of standard transformations we may expect to see. But we also have to consider the impact of physical aggregation changes that could affect the stability as well. So for example, unfolding can be important if your peptide has a higher order structure. You can sometimes get covalent or non-covalent aggregation. You can have absorption of your peptide onto the surfaces, et cetera. And this can also impact your chemical degradation as well. But for today's talk, I'm going to focus on the chemical degradation and some of the challenges we face that are unique to synthetic or therapeutic peptides. So I would say one of the biggest challenges is really that the chromatography for therapeutic peptides is quite complex. So when you're thinking about a large peptide, of course, any kind of chemical changes that it undergoes is small relative to the molecular weight, which makes it harder to separate on an HPLC method. Often this means it requires high-res mass spec to understand what degradation is happening in your product. So for example, you can see I have the overlay of the chromatograms here. We kind of have I would say, what looks like 4 main impurities that are growing in over the course of this study. But when we put it on the high-res mass spec, we actually find out that we have additional co-eluting impurities that aren't showing up in the UV signal. So this is a challenge for predictive stability studies because we're pretty early in development. We don't necessarily have an optimized method. So we're learning as we go, and we need to adapt. And then in addition to the chromatographically unresolved impurities, the high-res mass spec can be complicated by additionally multiple charge states, small mass shifts relative to the parent API, and the sensitivity to these low-level impurities, particularly in drug product matrices. Sorry, my throat's a little dry this morning. So recently I had the opportunity to try out, to visit the Lexington, Massachusetts Thermo site and work with Ryko to try out the new Exedion platform before it was released. You can see that there are many benefits of this new hybrid platform, which are highlighted on the slide here. There's a dry pump, faster calibrations, reduced in-source fragmentation. But 2 that I'm going to highlight today are really the improved sensitivity offered by the new source design, as well as the enhanced dynamic range. I'm going to focus on the improved sensitivity first, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the EDR once I get to that part of the talk. So with respect to the differences, with respect to the Exedion, I was comparing it to our existing hybrid that I have in the lab today, which is a Q-Exactive Classic. You can see some of the differences between the 2 platforms are highlighted on this table here. 2 that I'll point out are the high-capacity ion transfer tube that is on the Exedion. It has a letterbox-style ion transfer tube. Additionally, it has an ion funnel as opposed to the S-lens that is on the Q-Exactive Classic, which again allows improved ion transfer. So I tested this out using icotrokinra as a model peptide. I will refer to it as ico probably as the talk goes on, just because it's a little bit of a mouthful. You can see the structure here. It has many of the characteristics that make synthetic peptides challenging. So for example, there's a cyclic component in the top portion of the molecule. There's non-natural amino acids. So these are many of the structural features that are challenging when we're talking about structural elucidation. I subjected this molecule to solution force degradation, so either oxidation in the presence of hydrogen peroxide. You can see the black trace is the control. The purple is after subjecting it to hydrogen peroxide, and there's 4 new peaks that form. And likewise with base stress solution force degradation, I see 3 additional new peaks that are forming. So of course, the next question is, well, what are those peaks? How can we understand the degradation that's happening in this molecule? And if this were a molecule we were actually developing, how could we potentially mitigate that so we have a more stable drug product? So I put this on our Q-Exactive Classic. You can see at the top is the UV spectrum. I see those 3 peaks that I saw before. Everything looks great. But then when I look at my tick, it becomes a little bit challenging, right? Like I don't see very great peaks in the tick. Of course, I can look at the offset from the UV to the mass spec and kind of go looking in the chromatogram and find the masses I'm looking for. But particularly with peptides, this can become really challenging. 1, because of the co-eluting impurities, as I mentioned before, but then additionally, the very slight retention time shifts that you see in the method make it challenging to be certain that that peak matches up. However, we can do this, right? So I can look at the offset, I can integrate the mass spectra in that region. I found a mass that was doubly charged in this case. I can also see some additional counter ions that give me some additional confidence in that. I can then compare the extracted ion chromatogram for the mass I observed to the retention time. I can see that the offset is what we expect for the offset between the UV and the mass spec. And then look at the structure of ICO. So if it were doubly charged, this would be the mass that we would expect to see around 949.42. However, I'm observing 949.91. As we know, this is high resolution. It was well calibrated, so that's not close enough. So actually what's happening here is deamidation, most likely at one of the sites highlighted in blue, converting that amide bond to a hydroxyl. Now, when I ran the exact same sample with the exact same HPLC method on the Exedion, you can see quite a dramatic improvement with respect to the tick signal. You can now see clear peaks in the tick. It's important to note, so there were differences in the HPLC system. So our Q-Exactive Classic, we have an Ultimate 3000. This has a newer Vanquish system on it. However, we tried to keep everything as similar as we could. And the improvements in the tick signal are not due to a reduction of noise. It's not obvious in this image, but if you go and you look at the noise level, they're very similar between the two systems. So now my job as an analyst is much easier. I can more easily and with greater confidence determine which peak matches up to that signal in the UV that I see. So here I can look at the second peak, which is at RRT 0.96, around 10 minutes. Again, I see a doubly charged species. This time, I can look at the EIC, verify that it matches both the peak I see in the tick and the offset from the UV. And then using the exact mass, I can be confident that this is an isomerization of the API that I'm observing. We see something very similar, so if I compare the Q-Exactive Classic and the Excidion with the other solution stress sample, the hydrogen peroxide, again, in the Q-Exactive Classic, I see very minimal signal in the tick, whereas in the Excidion, I see very clear peaks in the tick, which makes my life a lot easier. So Reiko and I were curious, what would the impact be if we were using automated data processing, such as mass metasite? Would these improvements help us out there as well? So Reiko ran this on using the same processing method for both sets of data. So this is the processing for the Q-Exactive Classic. I know they're a little bit small, but you can see on the left-hand side, it's pulling out 3 different oxidative impurities in the sample that it's identifying. If we compare this to the Excidion, however, it identified an additional 12 impurities automatically versus what could be done in the Q-Exactive Classic. And again, this is same sample, same method, everything is similar as we could make it. So I think there's really some strong advantages if you're using these automated tools to look at your data. So for the last little bit of my talk, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the EDR function of the new instrument. So the basic principle of this is that the full mass spec scan is dissected into 2 subscans. There can be typically 8 different windows for these 2 subscans, up to 10. And this improves the gas phase fractionation and ion delivery into the Orbitrap. These subscans are then stitched back together. So from my perspective as a user, it looks similar to any MS1 spectra that I would see. There's no difference there. However, this does offer increased sensitivity when you have these different subscans. You can also customize the windows. So if you're trying to target a specific mass to charge range or avoid a certain mass to charge range, you can customize your scan events so that you can have the best shot for success with this. So I looked at this again for peptide analysis. So I compared the same sample on the Excidion with EDR off, which is what you see on the top here. For this peak highlighted by the blue arrow, I saw a mass to charge, again, primarily doubly charged for this ICO species. However, if I turn on the EDR, now I can see the singly charged species as well with pretty good signal intensity. So again, as Jesse alluded to, this can be really useful for structure elucidation to see additional charge states, as sometimes you can get additional fragmentation information when you do the MS2. So I think particularly for peptides, which are, generally speaking, have multiple charge states available, it can be very helpful. And I didn't have the juice to try this out yet, but I'm also really excited about the possibility of this. My samples that I was looking at were pretty clean, right? They were API and solution. But if you're looking at any drug product with excipients in the matrix or any more like, for example, biological samples, I think the enhancements that you would see from EDR would be even greater. So with that, I'll wrap up. I hope I showed you some applications with respect to synthetic peptides. Improved sensitivity on the Excidion is really great. And I don't have it in the text, but of course, if you're doing any automated data processing, I think the Excidion will be very helpful for that. And the EDR function seemed to work quite well for enhancing the availability of additional charge states in the synthetic peptides as well. I'd like to thank my Thermo Fisher Scientific, both for the invitation to share this with you all today, access to the instrument, Ryko, who I worked with at the Lexington site, of course, Sebastian and Min for the invitation and collaboration, Ismail Zamora from Molecular Discovery, which is a mass meta site, and then, of course, my Abbvie colleagues that make it a pleasure to go to work every day. And thank you all.
Hi, thank you for the very interesting talk. I have a question about the EDR. Have you seen like the cycle time, if that has any impact, especially if you're doing like a chromatographic-based run, because of like the switching back and forth? Do you see any changes in the cycle time?
Yeah, so I mean, it does double your scan time.
Okay.
It does double your scan time, right? So you do have to be conscious of your total cycle time and your scans across the peak. I will say for my purposes, when I had it on versus off, I did not notice a significant degradation of the mass spec signal and the peak shapes or anything. So it didn't seem to have a significant impact if you set it up carefully.